All right, everyone, ready for another deep dive.
Let's do it.
This time we're diving into a short story called It's Not What It Seems.
Oh, interesting title.
Right, and it's all about how a simple misunderstanding can really blow up.
I think we can all relate to that.
Absolutely.
Everyone's been there.
So in this story, we meet Devin and Selena, and things get a little wild because of a little water.
Water.
Yeah, so picture this. Arizona.
Okay.
It's scorching hot.
Oh, I know that feeling.
105 degrees, to be exact.
Ugh, that's rough.
And Devin's just trying to cool off, so he throws some water on his face.
Seems harmless enough.
Right, except not quite.
Uh-oh, what happened?
He accidentally gets Selena completely soaked.
Oh, no.
And to make matters worse, her phone got wet, too.
Yikes. It's never a good combination.
Talk about adding insult to injury, right?
Definitely not the best way to make a first impression.
And the thing is, Selena was already in a bad mood from a phone call that didn't go well.
Ah, so she was already primed for a meltdown.
Exactly, and that's what makes the story so interesting. It's not just about the water. It's about how our own emotional baggage can turn a little mishap into a major conflict.
That's so true. We rarely enter a situation as a completely blank slate.
It's like those misunderstandings that start because you only heard half of what someone said because you were distracted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then you end up arguing about completely different things.
The worst.
And in this case, it sets the stage for things to escalate quickly.
Because instead of just apologizing, Devin tries to cool Selena down by throwing even more water on her.
Oh boy. That's like throwing gasoline on a fire.
And that's when the real trouble begins, because Selena doesn't exactly see it as a harmless joke.
Yeah, I can see how that could backfire.
It's like their brains has switched off the logic button and gone straight to water war mode. But here's the thing I find fascinating. Both characters genuinely believe their actions are justified.
That's a really important point. They've both created their own narratives about what's happening, and those narratives are fueling their reactions.
So even though they're both reacting to the same event, they're experiencing it in totally different ways.
Exactly. And that difference in perception is what often prevents us from finding common ground.
It's like they're speaking different languages even though they're using the same words.
And as the story unfolds, we'll see how this communication breakdown leads to some hilarious and very messy consequences.
Oh, we are just getting started. But before we dive into all that watery chaos, let's take a moment to think about how this dynamic shows up in our own lives. Have you ever had an argument that spiraled out of control because you were too focused on defending your own actions to see the other person's perspective?
Food for thought.
I'm sure we've all been there, but let's get back to Devin and Selena, because things are about to get a whole lot wetter.
That's an understatement. What starts as a simple splash escalates into a full-blown water war.
Oh, yeah. We're talking buckets.
Garden hoses
Even strategically placed cups of water.
hidden around the house,
Yeah.
waiting to ambush the other person.
It's like something out of a slapstick comedy. You can just picture it, right?
Absolutely.
But beneath the surface of all that watery chaos, there's a really important lesson here about conflict resolution.
Right. Because both Devin and Selena are so focused on their own immediate reactions.
They're not really thinking about the bigger picture.
Exactly. They've completely lost sight of their underlying needs.
Needs. Okay, I'm all for a good metaphor, but how do needs play into this soggy standoff?
Well, think about it. Devin just wanted to cool off from the Arizona heat. A pretty basic need, right?
Yeah, I can relate to that.
But Selena, on the other hand, needed to feel heard and respected, especially after that frustrating phone call and the whole unexpected trenching thing.
Okay, that makes sense. But those needs seem miles apart. How do we even start to bridge that gap?
That's where clear and direct communication comes in, which, spoiler alert, is sorely lacking in this story.
Because throwing water is easier than talking things out.
Well, it certainly seems that way for Devin and Selena.
So instead of a productive conversation, it's just an endless cycle of retaliation.
Exactly. But then the story takes another interesting turn. Selena's friends get involved.
Oh, boy.
And suddenly it's not just a one-on-one battle, it's a full-blown water war with multiple players.
Talk about escalating the situation.
Right. And this is where we see the power of social dynamics. Our behavior is incredibly contagious.
Especially in emotionally charged situations.
We're much more likely to get swept up in the heat of the moment when we're surrounded by other people who are doing the same.
Peer pressure to participate in a water balloon fight. Okay, I can see that.
Exactly. It's this whole other layer of complexity.
But like all good stories, this one has a climax, and trust me, it does not disappoint.
Oh, it's a doozy. Let's just say things get even wetter. And this time, it's not just Devin and Selena who end up soaked.
Nope. Selena's mom gets caught in the crossfire too. And the best part is, throughout this whole chaotic scene, Devin keeps repeating one phrase: "It's not what it seems."
Which, ironically, is the most accurate thing anyone has said so far. But of course, by then, it's far too late.
The damage is done, everyone's drenched, and honestly, I think even Devin's starting to realize that his plan to cool things down maybe backfired a little.
Just a tad. But you know, that's often how it goes with miscommunication. What starts as a small misunderstanding can quickly spiral into something much bigger and messier than we ever intended.
Leaving everyone involved feeling confused, frustrated, and probably in desperate need of a towel. So there we have it. A house full of soaked people, a mountain of hurt feelings, and this lingering question of how in the world did things go so wrong?
It's the classic question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The aftermath of a communication breakdown.
And it's not like it's just a one-time thing either. These kinds of misunderstandings, they can really do some damage to relationships in the long run.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to develop those healthy communication skills, to learn how to navigate those choppy waters.
Because let's be real, we've all been Devin in this situation at some point, haven't we?
Oh, for sure. We've all misjudged a situation, reacted impulsively, said something we didn't really mean.
It's so easy to get caught up in our own perspective and completely miss where the other person is coming from.
Exactly. We get defensive, we start pointing fingers, and before you know it, you're in a full-blown argument.
And everyone's just left feeling worse than they did before.
Which is why that shift from me versus you to we're in this together is so crucial.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How do we go from a soaking wet free-for-all to a place of understanding?
Well, a good place to start is with active listening. And I don't just mean waiting for your turn to speak. I mean really trying to see the situation from the other person's perspective, even if you don't agree with them.
So it's about putting aside your own ego for a moment and really trying to understand where the other person is coming from.
Exactly. It's about putting yourself in their shoes, trying to see the world through their eyes.
Which I imagine is a lot harder to do when you're still dripping wet from a surprise water balloon attack.
Well, sure. But that's where that conscious effort comes in. It's about choosing to break the cycle of retaliation and approach a situation with empathy and understanding.
And maybe a towel.
A towel never hurts. But seriously, even when things seem really bad, like in Devin and Selena's case, it's never too late to try and repair the damage.
So what's the first step? How do you even begin to approach that conversation?
Start with a genuine apology. One that acknowledges the impact of your actions, regardless of your intent. Not, I'm sorry you're upset, but I'm sorry I hurt you. I was being careless, and I understand why you're upset.
It's about taking responsibility for your part in the breakdown, even if you didn't intend for things to go that way.
Exactly. And it's about being willing to listen to the other person's perspective without getting defensive.
Which, let's be honest, can be incredibly difficult to do in the heat of the moment.
It takes practice. But the more we can learn to approach these situations with empathy and understanding, the better equipped we'll be to navigate those inevitable communication bumps in the road.
So the next time you find yourself in a similar situation, whether it involves waterworks or not, take a deep breath, put down the metaphorical hose, and choose communication over escalation.
And maybe keep a few extra towels handy, just in case.
Always a good idea. And on that note, we'll leave you with this thought. What communication habits could you work on to prevent a minor misunderstanding from escalating into a full-blown relationship hurricane?
Until next time.